Hey, everybody, welcome to the Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing. My name is Dave, and I'm joined here with my co host. His name is Greg, and we are your unconventional therapist guide to nothing and just about everything.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
So, Dave, off the rip, I wanted to say a couple things today. Um, Thank you for everyone that's been showing up at our Patreon, which doesn't have to cost you any money, but like we've been engaging with people and having a really good time with that. And we usually talk a lot about it at the end, and I don't want to talk a lot about it now, but I do want to bring it up and say to all of you who listen and enjoy this, come on over to Patreon. We're starting a little community. You don't have to pay. Down the road, you can if you want. But we just our first mission here is to kind of get our like the people who are really into this, really have the ideas to keep this going and really want to like work with us. Just to, we've got some things down the pike that we really want to share with you all. So please like come over to Patreon and just become a free member to start.
You'll even get to talk to Greg.
Yeah, I'll be on there chatting it up.
He has been.
You're right, and Dave said, Greg, why don't you do anything with our social media? And I said,
And he has
okay.
been.
So like I've been
Like
kind of making
crushing
an
it.
effort, and it's not
Yeah.
great. And I've been running it by every time I make a reel or something, I'm like, okay, so I know what I did wrong with that. Even the last one I did, I'm like, all right, I watched it. I'm like, you don't even know what I'm talking about, really. But I was into what I was talking about, but I'm me and I know exactly what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you got to be a little more concise. I don't know what it is, but we'll figure it out. All that said, come on over to Patreon, join us. Let's have some like interpersonal connection there.
You know, communication is tough.
Mm,
And that it's the root of most conflict, right? It's an issue. Somehow it's an issue with communication,
hmm
whether one side's not sharing enough, the other side's sharing too much. Something is always awry with communication in conflicts. And Greg, I think one of the things that I really value about our working and collaborative relationship is our communication. At times we handle tough conversations really well,
We do.
better than probably anybody else in my life that I have tough conversations with. So I know when
Yeah.
I share something with you, you will hear me. You usually will take the information in before you respond and kind of process what I'm trying to say or figure out what I'm trying to say.
Hmm.
And we usually come to some sort of positive conclusion. And that happened recently with this. And I'm,
Yeah.
I'm only saying that because I feel like it's valuable to point that out to people that, we also struggle at times in our lives with some of the things that we talk about,
Sure.
but we also try to make efforts to do the things that we talk about. One of those being, clear communication.
Yeah, if
Uh,
something's bothering you, don't just keep tucking it away and letting it like
right.
fester. Bring it up, bring it out in the open, and maybe the other person's unaware. You know what I
And
mean?
and I'm definitely guilty of bottling things up and letting them fester. So I've really worked at that with our, working relationship here. And I think it's paid off because we've been able to consistently have conversations that feel productive.
How you think of the word paid, but it's worked out for our our working relationship. Paid off. I don't know, something different. Maybe down the road. Dave, I am interested heavily in this topic that we're going to be talking about today, solution focused therapy. And I leave a little piece of that out that I'll get to in a little bit. But I remember as a kid, I used to watch this show, Groucho Marx. He had like a little game show. It was like this old timey comedian.
What year were you born?
Okay, I know. But he did have a show that was on, it was black and white, and he was on like reruns. And I remember
Greg,
one
we're
night,
the same age. What were you watching? How
I
did
don't
you
know.
get
I don't
this?
know.
Were you in a
I don't
time
know.
portal?
So it's funny. I don't know how, but I did have a little tiny 13-inch TV, if you could believe it, in my room, black and white, and
Whoa,
I would pop this thing
fancy.
on. I know. That's
But it,
fancy.
it was fancy, but it only played Groucho
Yeah.
Marx
Yeah. So
on
window into
repeat.
the past, and I'm glad I did. Anyways, there was one point where I read a little biography about him because I found him very interesting. And every morning he would say to himself, I, this is quote Groucho Marx, I, not events, have the power to make me happy or unhappy today. I can choose which it shall be. Yesterday is dead, tomorrow hasn't arrived yet, and I am going to be happy in it. So that is Groucho Marx. And you can hear some of Carl Jung in there with his like, we're not our past circumstances, they don't define us. And we decide who we want to be. We aren't our circumstances essentially, right? Also some Viktor Frankl with the idea that we can control nothing but our attitude in any given circumstance, our reaction. It is very powerful to think this way and forward thinking. Like I use the metaphor a lot um, in therapy as like, there's one side of therapy where you really need to go dig into the past, and then there's the other side of therapy where I kind of liken it to a taxi or an Uber because they don't need to know all the places you've been to get you where you want to be. And today we're talking about that a little bit, right? There's a
Yeah.
therapeutic model that adopts that very principle.
I heard that Groucho Marx was actually born Grouchy Marx, and then
Oh,
he chose to become Groucho. He said, "I'm not going to be grouchy every day of my
dude, that's
life."
a dad joke, I think.
Sick.
Yeah, I know. I like that. Dave, allow me to go on. I firmly believe that, so the past is important. We have done a lot of episodes that talk about like digging into the past. I do find that like very important, but I really think that there's no relief from the pain of mental illness, whether it's, anxiety, depression, whatever. You have to orient yourself in an optimistic future, right? And I also believe that having agency plays a huge role in mental stability. We've talked about that. We've talked about how to be a good agent for yourself and what that means. Agency, like, just that feeling that you have some control over which direction your life's going and, you know, accomplishing things that builds self-confidence. So we're talking about looking into the future, forward thinking, and another component of this therapy is the steps and the goals that you look at in solution focused therapy. They have to be attainable, they have to be actionable. And in a sense, it's important that they have to be knowable because a lot of times people will be like, I just want to feel better. I just don't want to feel this way anymore. Those aren't really like goals that we can kind of take steps towards. Or we could in a more existential model, but in terms of like solution focused therapy, it's like I want to know where you want to be.
I think that was the
Um,
first time you actually said what the topic of today was.
no, we did. We talked about it a little bit. I called it solution focus and I left out the
Oh,
brief.
that's right. That's right. You did say that. I was like, did we actually say that this is solution focused therapy is the topic? Greg, in order for anybody to actually understand what you're encouraging, what do you commonly see? Like, what is it that we typically see that perpetuates issues or causes people to get stuck or kind of goes against what the point of solution focused therapy is?
Well, people often get trapped in, their past, what the past traumas, which understandably, of course. Also, like if they're depressed, if they're anxious, they want to think more about that. They want to like, wrestle with that in their mind,
Why?
but it's because it feels urgent, right? It feels like that's the path. That's the thing that's itching you. That's the thing that's bothering you. These thoughts, these feelings, these old emotions that have been lingering around. But like if you stay engaged with them, you're stuck with them, right? But maybe they can be there and they can go with you to the places that you need to be. And then they kind of like fall behind a little bit as you gain more and more confidence and they dissipate and their voice is lower and lower and lower until you really can't hear them anymore.
Another thing that I think people causes people to get stuck is it's kind of like that thing with anger, right? We talk about an easy emotion to attain and to get quick results is just to engage in anger. So
Mm.
if you're sad and you get angry, it's easy to get whatever made you sad out. If it's like one of those things, right? It's easy. Sometimes commiserating or just you know being angry about something that happened or kind of like feeling like just having those thoughts and rethinking things, it's kind of just an easier thing to attain. Is it helpful? No, but it's like I think it makes us like sometimes we just look for the thing that comes easiest at times rather than search for the thing that's maybe a little harder but more helpful. You know what I mean? So some people just love being mad or being bothered and they like fester on thoughts. And I think it's because it's like it's something you can feel and you feel like you almost feel like you're doing something, but you're not, right? You're just stuck.
It's a very hard thing to kind of wrap your head around. And I'm glad you're bringing this up because I have this, I read this in a book, no big deal, but I really have this like quote that I pulled out of a book on solution focused therapy, which I happen to have read prior to this, but it was specifically for depression, anyways. I modified it slightly, but and it's exactly that point that you bring up. And the quote goes like this, a little bit paraphrased. So, quote, getting rid of unhappiness is not the same as achieving happiness. Getting rid of fear, anger, or depression will not automatically fill you with peace, love, and joy. Getting rid of weakness will not maximize your strengths. So, sorry. Sometimes focusing on these negatives keeps us grounded in them. If you find yourself in a swarm of bees, this is all me right here. If you find yourself in a swarm of bees, you don't ask yourself, how did this all happen? Did I step in some honey? Do I have some weird pheromone situation? Am I just, like do I look like a bee with like a little bit of lipstick on, like Bugs Bunny used to do? You don't go through all that if you're in a swarm of bees. What you do is you find the fastest way out, or the best way out, or the most efficient way out, or one step out, right? So you find the path out and you find it quickly. And this is solution focused, brief therapy because you find it quickly. And I
Wait,
think that's the important part of it.
if you were in a swarm of bees,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
wouldn't consider, did I step on a hive? Was it one of those like ground ones? Did I whack something where there was like a nest? You would wonder if you
I'm
had
so
honey
glad you're
on you.
saying this. I'm so glad you're saying all this. Oh yeah, okay, those are a little bit more rational, better, like probably questions to ask
Why
yourself.
would you have honey on
I-
you, Greg?
And they're like, we have our own honey. Why is this guy wondering if he has
Yeah,
honey?
they don't think they chase honey all day long. They're looking for pollen and
Do I
stuff.
look like a flower? Is what I should ask myself. Did
Yeah.
I dress like a flower today? No, but it's funny that you're saying that because, like, exactly that, right? Did I step in a fucking? Ooh, sorry. Did I step? Sorry,
It's
excuse
a
me.
little early for the
The
for
sailors
this.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not hating on sailors. I was one. So, but those are the questions that you're asking yourself. Oh, what was it that I did this? How did this all happen? Did I step on this? Did a hive fall on my head? N- Is that important? I mean, of course, but really, does that get you out of the situation?
No,
Right.
no. Yeah, no. That's like an afterthought. Like, how did that happen? Like,
Yeah.
what did I do? Not
Who
in the
cares?
moment.
Who cares?
Yeah.
I've been in it long
But
enough. It
but
doesn't
in
matter.
all honesty, though, for as someone who has been swarmed by bees,
Oh, wow.
you don't think about anything
Yeah.
actually in that moment except for like, what the hell?
As,
Get
as
out of
someone who's
this.
never been in a swarm of bees, I thought that was a pretty good metaphor by myself. And I came up that is not that is a Greg Sharptier original. Sometimes I'm proud of him, sometimes I'm not. Um, but anyways, this
Did I
solution.
have honey? That's my
Did I have
favorite.
honey?
I'm
I
like,
did have honey. I'm not going outside after I had honey
I
in my.
mean, yeah, all right.
So this is developed by Steve DeShazer and Inso Kim Berg. Um, It's collaboration with their colleagues at the Milwaukee Brief Family Therapy Center beginning in the late 1970s. So it's it's one of those therapies that's like, yes, it's a model, but it's also borrowing from, so I'll tell you who was borrowing most of all from, and I don't know if you got this like reading from this, but if you're at all into like Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or any of the Stoic philosophies, like this is that. They're borrowing heavily from that,
Which is
right?
fine.
Which is fine. Which is fine. Not
Needed.
judging.
They didn't make their own theory, so
I know. Who are they borrowing from? I know we
yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah.
So, solution focused therapy.
Yeah,
It's a thing, as Greg said. It is a
it is.
thing. It exists. What are the key principles to SFT? Let me go through it right now. So first off, as Greg mentioned several times, it focuses on the future. So SFT prioritizes the client's desired future goals, rather than dwelling on the past problems or analyzing the causes. It is a strengths based approach. It emphasizes and utilizes the client's strengths, their resources, past successes to achieve desired outcomes. It's goal oriented, so it helps the client set clear, achievable goals and develop a plan to reach them. And it's typically a short term therapy, often lasting only a few sessions, focused on finding practical solutions.
So what do you think about a few sessions of therapy?
You know what? You do that, you do solution focus for a few sessions, and then you go into their other problems that they're eventually. So, when I hear that, I kind of like chuckle to myself because there's no way. it's so funny when you realize you like relearn these theories, because obviously we've already learned these in
Mm,
school, but you kind of like forget if you don't utilize them or constantly like brush up on them. It's funny how like you read up on it and you're like, oh, I do that. I literally do that theory. I
yeah.
do it all the time actually. And
It's
then they
called the
say
first
like
session.
yeah, they do the duration and it's like, no, it's probably something I splashed in because a patient came in with a problem, and we had to work on this thing. But then they have the rest of their life that we're still unpacking and trying to like go over. So yeah, no, it's when I say 4 sessions, yeah, maybe to do this theory or this therapy, but
Yeah,
this
and it's
people
funny
don't
because
usually
it's
come
like
in just because of one problem.
no,
Just
and
from
the
my
other,
experience.
I'm glad that I stopped on I just kind of like held you there for a second because it's like it takes a few sessions to do the most important thing in a therapeutic process, and
Build
that's to build a
rapport.
relationship. Yeah,
Yeah, for
exactly. So
sure.
it's like, come on, come
No,
on.
you know what? Someone comes in and I start doing this with them today in today's modern society.
Yeah,
They're not doing this crap with me yet.
no,
They got to get to know me. They got to get to trust me. They're going to give me half-ass answers until they know that like, oh, this guy is actually here for me and really can, is able to help me. Then you do this stuff. But if first session I'm doing some of this stuff, they'll engage me, but they're not going to like really be
yeah.
as committed
First
to it.
session, you'll do some of this stuff. You'll do a little bit, probably more like Carl Rogers person-centered stuff. Just kind of like get everyone on
I'm
the
just
same
like first session. I'm like, spill that tea. Tell me what's going
page.
on in your life.
Yeah.
Tell me all that gossip.
You look anxious. That's what
Tell me about it.
All right.
All right. So how it works. So again, identifying strengths. The therapists help clients identify their strengths, the resources, and past successes um, that can be applied to their current situation. So, you might explore, who are the people that you lean on when something's going on? Who's someone that you trust that you can share this information with? Can you think of a time in the past that you've had to, do something comparable to what we're doing now? Those kind of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So back to the goal setting, that would be the next thing. Together, there's a collaboration with the therapist and the patient to define clear, achievable goals that move the client forward towards their desired future. I think achievable goal is a very important thing,
Yeah.
right?
How often is that like something that speaking for myself, it's like, how often do I say like, all right, let's like figure out what we can like accomplish here.
I tell you, I did this thing with a patient.
Oh,
This,
do tell.
yeah, Greg, it's very ethical. Uh, so we at the start of the year, he's very against New Year's resolutions. And I brought up that Daruma doll, which I've talked on here about before, but it's that Japanese doll where it's all about making goals for yourself. And if you don't achieve it, the goal doesn't go away. You just work on it again the next year. So we made a list, I explained that to him. We made a list. I was like, this isn't New Year's resolutions. This is goals for yourself. And he started with we went through all the domains of his life: work, pleasure, home, relationships, and he made a goal in all the domains. And it was very cool because these were all like things that I could tell were important to him.
Hmm.
And we have progressively checked in on these goals from, I think we made them in January to last week. He is, and he minimizes his progress. He has done already half of his goals easily, right? And he's made a step of progress in each one of his goals. And it's because his goals were all very attainable, realistic, and they weren't like, I'm going to lose, this such and such weight, so I have to do this. They weren't like all these different steps. It was like, no, I'm going to like for home, I'm gonna work on. I got to replace the windows in my house. Like things that are like realistic, that are life
Yeah.
things that he's probably been putting off, and will help him feel like, hey, I did something for my home, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about: achievable goals. These are realistic things that maybe you've been putting off, and just you can work on them. Things like that.
And they build confidence.
They
Make
totally
you
build
feel better.
confidence. You feel motivated. You feel like you're doing something in your life, or you realize I'm on the wrong path. This goal actually means nothing to me. And
Hmm.
I'm going to now scratch it off my list because I actually don't find that goal to be that important now that I've actually worked towards it a little bit. The next step would be developing solutions. So the therapists guide the clients to develop practical strategies and actions to achieve their goals. So essentially, that's what I was just saying. It's kind of like take the goal and then start to look at, like, break it down into steps. Like, how am I going to get to this goal? And then you monitor progress. You track the progress towards the goal and you make adjustments as needed. Again, which I just said, like if you decide maybe now the goal is not something I even want to work towards, that's totally fine. Um, so yeah, that's how it works. And the benefits,
Ooh,
obvious. Increase self-esteem and confidence, right? So focusing on strengths and successes can boost someone's self-esteem. Improve problem solving skills. You learn to identify and utilize strengths to address challenges and enhance motivation and hope. Focus on the future and achievable goals can increase motivation and a sense of hope. These
yeah.
are all positive things, Greg.
These are positive things. I agree.
Don't you agree? And
Yeah.
last is reduce symptoms. So focusing on solutions may help experience a reduction in symptoms and improve overall well-being. So on paper, this reads very simple.
It does. And it is very simple. And I think sometimes that's okay. Because what are you hearing with like a lot of that stuff? It's something that we've come back to over and over again. I don't know if you like the same wording that I do, but I think the idea to just be someone you admire, this is helps you do that.
Well, I think that when I thought about this solution focus, I think about someone coming in to session and they're in distress because of like a situation going on, right?
Right.
And sometimes like there's other situations where like you might have to it might be a relationship issue, it might be so a family type thing, and you're just so caught up you don't know how to act, you don't know how to go forward. And I think those are some of the hardest ones. They might seem simple to an outsider, but like for the person involved, it just feels very heavy. And I think that this is a good one because you're working with someone. Like these are all things that you could probably do alone, but the having that outside perspective, that rational, like unrelated to the issue at hand perspective, I think is super beneficial for some situations. And that's where I think that's really effective with the the patient therapist relationship for this approach, if that makes
Yeah, and
sense.
it's also like, let's hold on. It's like there's an urgency to it. It's like, hold on, let's take all the emotions out of this for a second and just look at what we have on
Yeah.
paper, basically.
It really is taking like a rational, like
Yeah.
taking, yeah, we always talk about that emotional mind, the rational mind. It's taking a more rational minded approach to a situation where you might have a lot of emotion. And you know what? That's probably who this is geared towards most.
Hmm.
Because you know what, if you're already a really logical or rational minded person, you probably don't need this approach. You've probably
No,
done all
probably
these
not.
steps.
And let's talk a little bit about before we like I'm going to talk about how this is different from like the other sort of traditional therapy models that we've talked about in the past. But hang on after this too, because we're going to talk about some tangible interventions and some exercises. So that's going to
Yeah,
be
so
good.
don't go away, don't
But
turn
don't
that
go away.
dial. Don't
I
turn
figured we'd
that
start
dial.
throwing something in maybe that's the Groucho Marx in me, but like don't turn that dial just yet, right?
Yeah.
Maybe throw that in every once in a while.
Yeah.
Um
Wait, did you
so
just leave the room? Come back in. We got something to share with you.
yeah. Hey, you didn't miss the good stuff. Or maybe you did. I don't know.
Oh, you just
So
you just arrived at work? Your boss can wait.
oh, I like that
Tell
actually. I really like that
him
actually.
to chill the hell out.
I honestly felt like I was in my car and you were talking to me. That was
Tell your
good.
boss to chill the hell out. You're trying to listen to something.
Yeah, get a grip, boss. It is. Anyways, all right, so it's different from other kinds of therapies in that you don't focus on the past. That is different. I really think, I mean, that's wildly different in a lot of ways. It doesn't
I
delve
hate that.
deeply into the
I hate
traumas
it.
or analyze
That's
the
all I want to
causes of
do
that.
though, Greg.
I
That's
I know you
literally all
like
I
that a
want to
lot.
do.
I know you like that a lot. I know you do. And that's okay. And here's something else that sometimes so if you're not focusing on the past, you're emphasizing the present and the future. So the primary focus is on the client's current situation. That's important, right? So we need to know where you're at in your life and we need to know where you want to be. That's what we want to know in solution. We only got 3 days to work on this, so we really cannot get into like a lot of this stuff. Um, and it's gotta be a collaborative approach, which I think is cool. So this isn't you laying on the couch. This is you sitting. I almost feel like kind of close together and getting your. Let's put our heads together on this thing. We've
Maybe
got
we're
a
both on the
problem,
couch together, sitting side by side,
maybe, right?
hands
And
to
then
ourselves,
that's how you approach it.
hands to ourselves.
Hands to yourselves, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Collaborative approach, though. Collaborative process where you and the person you're working with work together to find solutions. That's important because if you're working together to find the solution, you feel like the client feels like they're really in on it too, instead of just you guiding where they're,
You know, it makes me think of that old phrase, and I say this quite a bit to people who have people in their lives that, you know, they're trying to help, but they can't. You can't want something more than the person you're trying to help, right?
Mm.
So when you're working collaboratively, like even as a therapist, I'm sure there's times where you probably feel like, do I actually want this more than this person? Do I want the change more than this person actually wants the change? Or do I want to help this person more than they actually want the help? Are they just kind of here because it feels good to talk about something and that's it? Like, you know what I mean? So
No, I do. It
when
can
we
be really
talk about
frustrating.
the
Yeah.
collaborative approach, it's like we both want to work on this together.
Yeah.
We're not, it's not one side is more invested than the other. It's both together. I think that's super important.
It seems like a very like a David Burns approach where it's like, let's do this together. And if you're not into it, you're wasted. We can't do this.
You're wasted.
You're wasted. You're wicked wasted.
You know, can
Or
I
from
just say something? If I were a person,
you are.
yeah, oh wow. Cool. If
You.
I was a person that was
Yeah.
not involved in mental health counseling,
Yeah.
right? And I was listening to us explain this podcast, I'd be like, isn't that the whole point of therapy in general, you idiots? Like, this sounds so basic and like obvious. I'd be like, why are you explaining this really obvious thing to me? But the thing is, it's not that simple when you're actually doing this work. People come in, and sometimes it's really hard for them to see the future. It's like we were talking about it. They get lost in their thoughts. You know, it's
Yeah.
impossible for them to see a way forward at times. They're so blinded by all the negativity going on, all the stress, all the trauma, what they're revisiting, whatever it is.
Yeah, it,
It
it can really be like a cloak that goes over your head. You can't see
Ooh,
anything but
a
the
cloak, you nerd. Oh my god,
cloak might
Greggy
have not have
Potter
been the
over
best
here.
word. You know what,
Even
Harry, dude, it's so funny that you say that. Harry Potter was on at the gym. Maybe that's
Oh
where
no, I just said
yeah,
cloak.
cloak was in there.
All of a sudden he thinks he's invisible. It's Greg, we can see you. So, I just want to, reiterate that point to people that are listening that maybe, are wondering why is this even a theory? Why doesn't this seem like what you're supposed to do in therapy? No, not always. Not everyone comes in wanting to solve a problem.
They just want to feel better.
Right.
And that's not a solvable problem.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Thank you for
Right?
saying it that way.
Yeah.
That is exactly what I mean.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. And now let's talk. You want to, so, okay, person, this unidentified person that
Oh
Dave's
my
talking
God. I
about.
feel like I'm being seen right now. It feels so
So
good.
let's say this. Let's do some interventions. Like one of my ones that I still use, maybe even on the first or second time,
You
is a
would.
miracle question. I
You
love a miracle
would.
question.
Oh, you would.
I do. I love it. And I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. So you kind of like phrase it to the person, and you can have a little bit of fun with this, but it's more or less you saying to the person, "Suppose tonight." You get that kind of voice going.
Supposed tonight.
Yeah, exactly. A miracle happened, or a genie came, or a fairy was there, and you ask them, you know, to get rid of all my problems, like while I'm sleeping, take care of all my issues, get rid of my anxiety, get rid of my depression, get rid of anything I'm working on. Please get rid of these problems. And when you wake up the next morning, what would be different? Like, how would you be able to tell that the problem is gone or the miracle worked?
I would be on Love Island. I wouldn't be watching it anymore. I would be on Love Island.
No, you have
And
to
I'd be
wake him
like, it
up.
it worked.
You have to wake up in your bed.
Oh, damn
Okay.
it.
Okay, but look, that's not actually
You just
that's
ruined
silly.
it.
It's silly but that's not bad because you explore this fantasy, and then maybe when you say like that, maybe like let's do a smaller miracle or something like that, right? But like you explore this fantasy and see, like, you kind of go through it with them, what they see, what they hear, what's different. And the goal is to discover the small steps, that's important, that could lead to this, desired future. And we often think of the therapist can say or do one thing. Like people think that you can come into the therapy office and we'll say one thing, or you'll take a pill or something and you'll feel better. But the reality is it's a series of small little changes that
Yeah.
cause real change over time.
So here's my issue.
Yeah.
The miracle question.
Okay.
I have done one of two things every time I've tried to use the miracle question. I've either completely botched the question of how you set it up and then it just loses all of its effectiveness, or I've
Yep.
asked it to the completely wrong people
Yeah.
and then their response is like, "Oh, I don't know." And I'm
Oh,
like,
I don't know.
"Damn it.
It's like, okay.
Just give me something,
Give me something,
please."
right? Because like if they can see any kind of future, like you can say, oh wow, that's like an interesting like few. That's great. Like
Yeah.
that sounds awesome. Like, but what are the little things that would have to be done to get there? And
Right.
it's another in
Or they
thinking.
say something so outlandish, like I said Love Island, but like,
Yeah.
but like they say something so
Well, like what is it
outlandish.
about Love Island that's like you love so much? Like what is it that interests you about Love Island?
It's just this looks like a great place to be. Dude,
Yeah.
all
Right.
you do all day long is just explore these romantic relationships and like it's just amazing.
Dave.
No, it actually does look terrible. It's probably terrible,
No, it
but
sounds actually pretty good.
it looks super fun.
Oh man, Love Island. This is yeah. I'm gonna have to get into that
They don't
show.
have any responsibilities in life except for just talking with people, talking to
So
each other.
you want to talk to people and have less responsibility. So you want to have the job
You're gonna
where
tell
you're
me I'm
just
already in
talking
Love
to.
Island
Yeah,
in my
but it's like
therapy
you are
work.
saying like people don't have the insight into like the conversation that we had before this started, but it's like Dave, what you're saying basically is like I want to be able to talk to people a little bit more and not have the responsibility of the jobs that don't matter as much to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why Love Island's such a good place.
That I'll never make it to because
Oh,
I'm
you
too
will because
old.
it's a
Too
miracle.
old,
Oh, that's right. It's funny thing about getting old. Like we get canceled out of things. Like I'll never be a Navy SEAL.
and I'll never be on Love
You'll
Island.
never be
That's
on Love Island.
our two goals in
Go on.
life. Damn it.
So that's one intervention. Dave, why don't you give us a couple more? Like, because a lot of this stuff is just questions, but I think like they're good questions.
Sure. So the another one would be presupposing change questions.
Hmm.
Did I say that correctly?
You're saying it
Presupposing.
as if it's a question already.
I am. So a question could be like, what stopped a complete disaster from occurring? How did you avoid falling apart? What kept you from unraveling?
Because there's a person in your office and they're like feeling like they're in shambles. And then you say to them, how did you keep from being in shambles? And it's like, I am almost there, but like this. It could like kind of evoke something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Positive.
something positive.
Yeah.
How about this? Would this kind of fall in line with it too? Like, tell me what you feel you did well in that situation.
Oh,
That really
absolutely.
sounds like a challenging situation. Can you actually tell me though the things that you felt you did really well? Because I
Yeah.
always do that with people because they never think of that. They always go to the thing they did wrong.
That's almost part of the scaling or even like the exception questions. Like that's like this stuff. Like give us some of those. These are good questions.
Okay. Tell me about times when you don't get angry all the time. Never, never do I get angry.
I know you get a
Tell
lot of that.
tell me about times you felt the happiest.
That's a good one.
When was the last time you feel you had a better day? Um, was there ever a time when you felt happy in your relationship? What was it about that day that made it a better day? And can you think of a time when the problem was not present in your life?
All good questions.
Yeah,
They
decent,
invoke.
pretty decent questions, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, Now, scaling questions. So these are questions that allow a client to rate their experience. They also allow for a client to evaluate their motivation to change their experience. And these will allow for a practitioner to add a follow up question that is in the positive as well. So, an example of this, you could say, like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 representing the best it can be and one being the worst, where would you say you are today? And then a follow up question could be, why a four and not a five? Questions like these allow the client to explore the positive as well as their commitment to the changes that need to occur.
Yeah, because they can if they can see why a four and not a five, it's like, well, now if we know how to get to a five from a four, maybe we can get from a five to a six, right?
Yeah.
And like you can build on that a little bit.
Do you use this a lot? You sound like you do.
I do. I like a little bit of solution focus.
Do you use it like intentionally or like, or kind of like it just maybe comes naturally, like sort of what I was saying earlier?
Yeah, sl- it's funny because I'll like go through something just like we'll do a podcast and this. I'll probably use it for the next couple weeks a lot.
Yeah.
Because they're all super useful and but I do use this stuff a lot because I think questions in therapy are wildly important.
Wait, I'm gonna go on. I promise I'll go on to the next one in a second. How many
Yeah,
times did you use Ikigai last week?
I talked about it a few times.
I did.
It did come up.
Yeah,
It
and
did come up.
we totally made a joke about it, but I used it at least 4 times.
Yeah, it comes up like crazy.
I'm
It
like,
does.
dude, that sounds like your passion. We should talk about this thing called Ikigai,
Yeah. And I'll get the
and you should
components of
make
it right
money
now.
off of it. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny because like there was this kid that was talking about making YouTube videos and then also an artist. And I was like talking about like Ikigai and it's like how do you value it and like is it
Yeah,
monetary? Like is it aligned with like your morals, your values? It actually is pretty fun little thing.
yeah, yeah. I had similar. All right. So coping questions. These types of questions open up clients to their resiliency and it kind of recognizes that they are experts in their own lives. This helps them see what works and allows them to grow from a place of strength. So questions might be, how have you managed so far? What have you done to stay afloat? What is working,
Mm.
my guy? What is
Yeah,
working?
see, do you see that's just like a sort of a way to like shift your mind into like trying to I don't want to say look at the bright side, but I also like these like
I
future
see it,
oriented
Greg.
questions.
I see
Y-
it.
it is kind of like almost digging a little bit deeper gently to say like, all right, look, I get that that's going wrong,
It's
but
just
like,
going like this, like just a slight dig.
yeah, like
It's a
let's
little
go a little bit
paw,
deeper.
a little paw.
Let's get rid of some of that emotion for a second. Or like
Let's
what
scrape some of that emotion off the bone right
you know
there.
what I like? I like the idea of like writing your own obituary or like a letter from your future.
Ooh,
That's a good
ooh.
one.
Or what about like a pretend funeral?
Pretend funeral.
So I don't know if you ever seen this. I forget what part of Japan does this. I believe it's in Japan, but they actually will like bury you alive for a like an intentional period of time, and then have like a funeral for you and stuff like that. And then
Mhm.
you're almost like reborn or something like that.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be life changing.
Really? Okay, it's almost like ayahuasca, but like without all the drugs.
Yeah.
That sounds good. So what about all right, here's something I like to do. It's kind of along the same lines. I like to have people tell me about uh, themselves when they were at their best. And that's important because I think from there, then I can always be like, okay, so what were you doing differently? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like a
So how'd you
natural.
end up here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because that one works almost every time. So like I'll talk about like just kind of like think back into your head when you like remember being like at your best. And maybe if they're in a bad relationship, be like, oh, like I was single, I was hanging out, I was seeing my friends a lot more, I was going to the gym a lot, I was eating, you know what I mean? Like when they start breaking down like what they were doing differently, it's like, all right, so like how can you kind of guide yourself back to a time where you're like feeling your best? And is that who you want to be again, or do you want to be something different? But it's super useful. And another thing that I really like about solution focus is this thing that's so obvious, but also something that we don't work on too much, and that's the ability to turn on positivity at any moment. So like wherever you are, if you're sitting right here listening to a podcast, if you're driving, if you're at a doctor's appointment, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can ask yourself what is right about my current situation? Like, what makes me lucky to be here? and that little exercise kind of gets you thinking like, all right, so like what is right about my current situation? There's a lot that you can always find something that's right about your current situation, right?
Got it.
And that helps out a lot, I think. Um, but as in terms of like, I don't know, solution focused therapy, I think that it's kind of simple. It's kind of
No,
there's not a
it's
whole hell of a lot to it.
super simple.
I'm sure we'll get someone that's like, you forgot this part, and and that's
You
okay. Let's preface by being like, we are not experts on, we're not even solution focused therapy practitioners, you know?
right.
So we don't sort of claim any theoretical approach at all. We just kind of do an amalgamation of all of them, I think.
In the honor of solution focus therapy, maybe next episode you could move your microphone away from the camera so it stops doing this weird glimmering in and out throughout the entire episode, being super distracting. That's my
Okay. Oh,
solution focus for
why
this.
do, every time I move my head towards it, it like,
It's the worst.
I'm so sorry about that. How's that?
I apologize to everyone watching that for the entire duration of this. Get out of there. Get out of there.
Yeah. Well,
Or
there's a solution, and I'll focus on it.
okay.
Keep it out of there. That makes sense. All right, and I'm sorry. But Dave, you got anything else to add to about
No, I
like
mean
the
this is like I said, this is like very like straightforward, straight shooter approach. This is all right. So I guess here's the thing. We talked about the theory. I mean, we kind of gave some examples of how to do it. Now, can you think of an example of a time someone came in and you worked on this and how it and a time that was effective, or even for yourself? Can you think of that?
yeah, so often I think in my experience this wouldn't be something, this isn't like a treatment for like severe like mental illness or anything like that. This is something where someone's a little hung up, a little anxious about something, maybe they've been like dead end job or a difficult relationship or like you almost like solvable problems that feel really big,
Oh,
understandably.
how about this? How about you're working with teens and they're coming
Teens
in and
too.
they're struggling with grades, or maybe there's some kind of like social peer issue going on that's interfering with things, like their schoolwork or different
Oh my
things.
God. It's so funny that you say that because there is a portion in the book that I had that I use a lot with like teens, and it's just separating yeah, but and creating yeah and
Right.
because and is like more inclusive and you can push it along a little bit more. Because I don't know if this happens to you, but how many times do you kind of like, maybe reflecting something back to someone and kind of like trying to guide them towards like something that seems obvious to you, which could be hard for someone else to see, but like it's like, well, you could do this or this could happen or this is good. And you could say it and they'll be like, yeah, but I can't really do that because or like they're not getting along with their parents, and you bring up like a good try to like bring up a point about like their parents maybe trying their best and like, yeah, but my parents don't really get it, my parents are this, my parents are that. It's hard to like think of a good example right now, but like
Yeah.
I have one person who like what doesn't really like to go outside and go like won't get outside and won't go for walks a lot, but they just went to like a concert, and I was like, all right, well, you're telling me that you're having difficulty like getting outside your house and going for a walk around the block, like, but like you've gone to like a bunch of concerts, like do you think that maybe you can use some of that like that bravery, because it's amazing that you're able to do that, like being someone who's like panics quite a bit. Do you think we can apply some of that in like walking around your house and maybe getting over that hump, so building some confidence there? And they're like, yeah, but that was different, I was like, and
Mhm.
instead
Oh
of,
yeah, for
it's
sure.
it's hard, that's a hard thing, we're like,
Right.
"Grr."
I have this one teen patient that she's super smart, can easily like achieve really high grades. School is important to her, but she gets completely wrapped up in the dating world, the social life stuff, the peer conflicts. And when all that stuff's going on, she totally disregards her grades. She might, or like everything just comes crashing down. So whenever that happens, we have to kind of like take a pause and reflect, like, you know, typically these grades are important to you, right? They're something that you hold to a high standard. When do you usually do better? And then she'll recognize like when I'm not spending so much time focusing on these
Yeah.
problems and these, these people. And then we'll kind of come up with a plan. All right, so how are we going to get things back on track? And then we'll list the things that she needs to do, and just kind of like leave with that little like pep talk of you've done this 1,000 times before, you can do this again and stuff like that. So I think like someone like that is a person who's solution focused is really helpful for, and might even be something we have to repeat time and time again because it's kind of a repeated issue.
All right. All right. Well, I guess that wraps up solution focus.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. As always, if you can leave a rating and review, if you have not, then we would greatly appreciate that. Make sure you are subscribed to all the places we are. We're on every platform. We're on Instagram. We're on X. We're on YouTube. Yeah, that's it. That's all I can think of. TikTok. Oh, I didn't say TikTok. That's right.
Mm.
We're also on there, but most importantly, we are working very diligently on trying to upgrade the Patreon. You can also check the bonus episodes out on Apple Subscribe, so you could do that as well. But on Patreon, you get the full videos and all that good stuff. So yeah, thank you everybody for reaching out. We appreciate you, and we will see you next week. Have a
See you
good
next
one.
week.